அமைச்சர் பிடிஆர் பழனிவேல் தியாகராஜன் பேசின இந்த வீடியோ சமூக வலைதளங்கள்ல வைரல் ஆயிட்டு இருக்கு. அதாவது எலக்ட்ரானிக்ஸ் எக்ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ்ல பாத்தீங்கன்னா கிட்டத்தட்ட 700% தமிழ்நாட்டில் அதிகரித்திருக்கிறது அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு. ஆமாங்க, எலக்ட்ரானிக் எக்ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் has surged by over 700%. இது வெறும் ஆரம்பம் தான். இன்னும் 20 வருஷத்துக்கு இந்த ட்ரெண்ட் நிச்சயமா கண்டினியூ ஆகி பல சாதனைகளை தமிழ்நாடு படைக்கும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. என்ன பேசியிருக்காரு?
Because China has taken their intellectual capital and tooled up in a way that China is such an economic superpower, including in things like AI, where an open source DeepSeek can do at a fraction of the cost what much higher funded closed technology like OpenAI cannot do. And so in this era, we need to really think about what is it that we should focus on that gets us to the 9% real CAGR that will take us to 4 trillion. And my own view is that in politics and in governance, all too often we follow this adage, don't let the great be the enemy of the good. Very often we do things that are incremental, that are in keeping with the status quo, in kicking the can down the road. Big problems are not addressed like debt ratios, so forth. And sooner or later they become crises, and only then they start getting addressed. It is the nature of politics, it is the nature of bureaucracy, that incremental change in status quo is the default. But I think in this era, when we have 2 or 3 great advantages, we have phenomenal advantages. The prime example is that Tamil Nadu's manufactured electronics goods export has gone up more than 700% in less than 4 years. Now, as brilliant as we say we are, or we'd like to think we are, surely there are global trends that are driving the shift away from China that we are benefiting from. But this is just the beginning. This is not a 1-year trend, this is not a 3-year trend, this is not a 5-year trend. This is going to be a 2-decade trend, much like the rise of China was a 3-decade trend. So what we need to think about is there is going to be huge global opportunity that arises from the end of an era that was 1990 to 2020, let's say 23 era, COVID, from 1990 to COVID. And now we have a new era where the world is looking for great alternatives in great scale, and we need to benefit from it. The second is that the demographics of the world have reached a very clear inflection point. At this point, roughly 1 in 6 human beings alive is of Indian origin. That's a remarkable number. Just think about in the history of civilization when the last time that was. If you take out the aging populations of the west of China, where the population has been decreasing, the gross population has been decreasing 2 to 3 million a year for the last few years because of the decades of one-child policy. Then you say that of the working age population, roughly 1 in 5 people is Indian, of Indian origin somewhere in the world. Now you take out those parts of Africa where there are high birth rates, but they don't have access to basic nutrition or basic education, and therefore the likelihood that they will become productive members of society in any globally competitive or regionally competitive or free trade within any kind of small block or large block is very low. Therefore, of the realistic workforce of the world for the next 20 years, for the next generation, roughly 25% is going to be Indian, and in that, Tamil Nadu is going to have hugely outsized proportion of the skilled workforce. These are the 2 biggest variables in our favor. They are macro trends that we cannot engineer, we cannot take credit for, but as they say in the markets, timing is everything.